Alright everybody, so we just had a phenomenal chapter of One Piece, not just because I got 2 and arguably 3 major theories correct all in one go. I put out a fairly elaborate theory breaking down why Shanks having an evil brother actually most likely is true at a time that it was considered comical conspiracy theory material. I put out a theory explaining that the Gods Knights would be the main villains of Elbaf at a point in time that we were all confused as to who the main antagonist of Elbaf would be. And finally, way back in 2018, at a point in time where most everybody seemed to believe that Big Mom would be the primary villain of Elbaf, because we were coming hot off the trails of Big Mom's flashback in the manga that framed her as the primary villain of the Giants, and basically everybody penciled in, okay, we're gonna go to Wano and defeat Kaido, then we're gonna go to Elbaf and defeat Big Mom, and then after that we'll have an arc for Shanks. And I said no, I dropped 2 theories. First, that Big Mom and Kaido would go down together in Wano, and that Elbaf would actually be Shanks' arc. And that was actually the theory that put me on the map 6 years ago, that Elbaf would be Shanks' arc. Note, I'm not claiming that I'm the first person to ever have thought that Elbaf and Shanks might have been tied together, because some people had pointed out that Shanks' ship was a Viking ship which might be tied to Elbaf. So that was something that people had commented on in the past, you know, going all the way back to Marineford. However, the overwhelmingly predominant theory at the time was that no, Elbaf is going to be Big Mom's arc, because again, if you just go back and read community discussion around the time that Whole Cake Island was going on, the Big Mom and Elbaf ties were just so glaringly predominant in the story that pretty much nobody was saying that no, Shanks is actually going to be the main guy in terms of Elbaf instead of Big Mom. But as of this chapter, it seems that all 3 theories are confirmed. These are the Gods Knights, they are the main villains of Elbaf. One of them is Shanks' brother and likely the new leader of the Gods Knights, and with that, it makes it pretty much guaranteed that this is going to be an extremely Shanks-centric arc. So basically, we got 3 big ones in a row, hat trick, probably some sort of a record to start the arc considering that we're less than 10 chapters in. So strap in everybody, because we got a lot more to work with this chapter. I'm going to go so far as to say this: the man marked by flames is Shanks' brother. I'm not even going to put a theory out about that, because if you go back and watch my video on the Gods Knights being the primary villains of Elbaf, I already explained why that is, and if that sounds confusing to you, like why would the man marked by flames be traveling around on a ship, yada yada yada, well, just go back and rewatch the video, because it breaks down in detail why the clues are there, whether you all like it or not. So that is my next claim: the man marked by flames is Shanks' brother. I'm not even dropping a video on it next week, because I've got a much more interesting video coming out next week, because with this reveal that we just got this chapter, I think everything that's been set up about Elbaf so far suddenly comes together. Not just who the true villains are, but what their role in the plot is and was in the past of Elbaf, as well as the truth about Loki and what happened 6 years ago. So that's all going to be coming out next week's video. So if you want to keep following the correct theory train, then watch out for next Tuesday's video, because we got a really good one coming. And lastly, one other piece of information that came out this chapter makes me feel excited that another major theory that we just dropped on this channel recently is also going to come true, which is the Sunny is going to be upgraded by Franky. I dropped a video explaining that this is the Adam Tree, which is the tree that the Sunny itself is made out of. If the Sunny is ever going to be upgraded by Franky, it is going to happen here at this point in the story, and in this chapter, Franky literally, his one prominent line is talking about how this tree is interesting to him. Oda is already setting up something to do with Franky, the Adam Tree, and the Sunny, and considering that pretty much all of Franky's character storyline from Water 7 and Enies Lobby was set up for him one day building Pluton, should some other villainous characters ever awaken Pluton and it would have to be combated against, such as, say, the Blackbeard Pirates, who are clearly set up to do that next in the story, then Franky would have to take the responsibility of building a counter Pluton to combat it. And just go watch the video, it breaks down in detail why this is likely going to happen, and with Franky's line talking about the tree and the tree seeming significant to him, I think we're pretty much guaranteed to be going down that train as well, of the Sunny being upgraded, likely into some sort of a pseudo Pluton. So very exciting chapter for me for all those reasons. But first, we've got a huge holiday deal for you. Every single One Piece Island travel poster ever is now back and available again in the Morge store, with a major holiday pack discount. You can pick any 4 posters you like from the entire collection and get all of them 50% off. And don't miss out on the new posters this December. You can now get the classic islands of Water 7, Enies Lobby, Marineford, and Ohara. We're even rolling out alternate versions of past islands like Thriller Bark, Wano, Onigashima, and more. And the best part is, if you're trying to catch up to the travel poster collection and there are just too many to choose from, you can even get the complete World of One Piece bundle, which is the entire original set of all 15 travel posters, all together discounted for the ultimate collection. So if you want to treat yourself this holiday season, or you're looking for the perfect gift for a One Piece fan you know, then hit the link in the description below and get the holiday discount posters today. So now, aside from that, let's talk about the actual story contents of the chapter. Again, I've been loving the idyllic vibe of Elbaf, just a magical kingdom with a really kind and welcoming and nurturing society. Nothing at all like the warrior, barbarian type race we were once told that they were going to be like, and that's finally clarified in this chapter. It's because the late King Harald imposed a new sort of culture in the island, which really reshaped the way that people thought and acted and the values that they had, and now we have the peaceful Elbaf that we see today, and that's why things like, you know, the Owl Library and Saul's classroom and all of that can take shape here, because initially Saul was like, no, these guys are uneducated, barbaric, I'd never go there. But then we heard that, oh wait, Saul's actually taken all of O'Hara's books and poneglyphs and such and taken them over to Elbaf. How's he making it work there when he thought that it was just not his speed, not his type of place to be? And it turns out that it now is, considering that King Harald just turned the whole country around. Now, I know I've seen a lot of people have suspicions about the whole King Harald situation and what's really going on here, yada yada, like why are the God's Knights here, etc. There's conspiracy theories. We're going to talk about all that in Tuesday's video because I think the answer is very, very simple and very, very clear. But overall, I think the one thing we can say is that King Harald's teachings definitely changed the culture of Elbaf to be such a welcoming place for us and for us to really enjoy, you know, not just the Straw Hats, but us as the readers be able to enjoy it almost as though it's like a homey, cozy, really relaxing vacation spot where, you know, it's just, it feels like a beautiful little society in like its own little bubble, untouched by the outside world. And it sounds like they still do trade and stuff with the outside world because, you know, if you think about it, Frankie was able to get wood from the Adam Tree. How did he get wood from the Adam Tree? Well, he got it through trade. But, you know, you would expect that you wouldn't really be able to do trades with the Giants of Elbaf. Well, it turns out that it makes sense that in the modern day and age you can, because King Harald created a culture of trading with other nations. So you know, I'm going to save my thoughts on King Harald, but I think that a lot of the truth of what is going on in Elbaf and a lot of the truth of the current mysteries of the Ark come down to the type of king that he was, which again, we'll be breaking down in Tuesday's video, so I'm very excited for that one. Because Tuesday's video also wraps together the story of the God's Knights in Elbaf and what actually happened in the past, as well as Loki in Elbaf and what actually happened in the past, as well as the story of King Harald. So everything comes together with next Tuesday's video, so watch out for that. Now, that aside, as for the library itself, the Owl Library, first of all, I want to give a big shout out to Eric J.O. for winning the chapter predictions contest for this week, for correctly guessing that Saul would be giving a classroom tour for Robin. So we got a classroom tour and a library tour. And again, both of these things, I think these were kind of like the cherry on top for me for really enjoying the island of Elbaf, because Elbaf already kind of gave me a very warm, fuzzy feeling just being there. And now seeing that, you know, we've got a classroom with Saul helping teach and everything like that, and this beautiful library with all the books from O'Hara. I don't know, it's just, it adds to that warm, fuzzy feeling. It's just the cherry on top that, oh, this is so cute. They've also got a classroom where they're teaching these ideologies that aren't like warrior type ideologies, but actually scholarly around books and education and everything. And, you know, we've got this library where the Giants can now actually focus on reading and expanding their knowledge of the world. And then, of course, the magic of the Owl Library, that it can expand the books in size. That's very, very interesting, because a lot of people have talked about, obviously, the gigantic sword that is outside Elbaf, also outside Wano. So maybe there's something there. Maybe that's a little hint as to the secret of how these things ended up at the gigantic sizes that they're at right now. Although it is curious, because unless I'm misreading or I'm mistaken, San Juan Wolf has the gigantification fruit, so maybe there's some other fruit that manipulates sizes in a different way that we have yet to understand. Or maybe it's just a magical property of this owl space, this owl library in particular, that we're just not really going to get an answer for, kind of like the Rainbow Bridge. So, you know, we'll just wait and see. And now a lot of people were also talking about the two little revelations that we got this chapter and saying that, oh, Morge is going to be really upset about this, Morge is going to be really upset about this. That being Vegapunk, the clone situation, and then, you know, Lilith working on curing Kuma, right? So, people really don't understand, okay? The simple fact that people believe that I'm going to be extremely upset about the Vegapunk situation means that they did not watch or comprehend the video. My issue is not, I don't know how many times I have to say this, okay? But let's try and say it very slowly for the people. My issue is not fake out deaths. My issue is trying to elicit dramatic, painful emotions from the reader through false death scenes. Go watch the video on Saul if you need another breakdown of what the difference between these two are, okay? One, it's all about the emotion and drama, or should I say melodrama, of the scene. The other, is just a fake out death, which is often done as a bit of twist or whatever, but the author's not trying to turn it into a very dramatic scene. Please go reread chapter 1108, where Vegapunk is stabbed and killed. If you cannot understand why I don't care about this scene, why I would not have a problem if Vegapunk is dead or alive after the scene, or if he's brought back, or if he's cloned or whatever, then you fundamentally do not understand my whole critique regarding Saul, because these are very, very, very different situations. There is no dramatic scene written around Vegapunk dying. In fact, if you go back and read that chapter, pretty much everyone's main takeaway was, holy shit, Luffy just went giant form and grabbed Saturn and Kizaru and the fight just goes on. Vegapunk's death is a little blip in that chapter. Oda does not turn it into, we don't even fucking see him dying or something like that. It's like a tiny little blurb that Sanji's saying in the corner about, hey, wait, hang on here, wait, why are you smiling or whatever. Oda's not making, like, it's not just some grand melodramatic multi-page passing away of Vegapunk that we're getting, so I don't give a if this is a fake out death or not. If Oda's saying that Vegapunk didn't actually die there, he's coming back later on in a clone body or whatever, or the clone body's so different, blah, 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 I don't really care, because it doesn't neuter any sort of scene for me, because that's not really a tragic scene in the first place. I don't think a single person fucking read chapter 1108 and cried in like those side little panels where Vegapunk's getting stabbed and Sanji's like just off screen saying, oh wait, Vegapunk, hold on, what's happening, whatever. Everybody's reaction was talking about Luffy and all that stuff, right? Now, with Vegapunk being alive and literally all of the Vegapunk clones, etc., satellites, etc., being alive in some shape or form, yada yada, I'm gonna say that I think it's kind of silly. I think it's kind of silly that Oda just, even like fragments of this character's consciousness, Oda just doesn't really want to like just remove them or anything like that. He needs everyone to be alive and well in some way at the end of the day. And even with these like absolute throwaway characters who've got like the depth of a fucking teaspoon, Oda's just like, no, but I need Atlas in some way to still be in the story or something. Like, I think it's silly to do this many fake out deaths when it's like the most disposable characters possible and you're still not really going through with it. You know, I think it's silly. But I don't think that this ruins any particular scene from Vegapunk's death, because Vegapunk's death was not, like, go back and reread the scene where Vegapunk dies. There's nothing to it. It's literally a footnote in the flow of events that's happening at that point of time, at least dramatically and in terms of the focus that it's getting, and there's no attempt to really elicit emotions from the reader by milking that scene. Now, you could bring out the discussion about Kizaru and what this all means for Kizaru, because Oda did have a dramatic scene written much later on for Kizaru when he's thinking that he killed Vegapunk, but I personally think that's a very different subject entirely. And you could definitely argue that that now rings hollow, but I personally think that that's a very different subject entirely that maybe I'll piece out in some other format later on. But again, the simple fact that people are saying, Morge, Mickey Mouse riding Vegapunk, you're gonna be really upset about this, that just goes to show how many people fundamentally don't understand what my actual critique of Saul's death scene is, which is the critique is the scene. The critique is the scene. It's not the logic. It's not Ice Time Capsule. It's not, but was the rest of Robin's backstory sad? No. It's the critique of the scene, and the critique is how that scene is eliciting emotions in a fundamentally cheap way. That does not fucking apply to anything related to Vegapunk's death, so I don't give a shit. I just think it's silly, and it kind of means that One Piece has very, very limited stakes, and I think it speaks to Oda's hesitance to have anything that has lasting stakes or consequences. I think it's silly, and I think it can be kind of bad that One Piece almost has little to no stakes if, like, no Vegapunk satellites at all really die or whatever, and like Vegapunk himself, it's just clones now, so you can never, there's always, if you're always just going to write deaths with some sort of an out, I just think it's kind of silly, and there's, you know, it affects the stakes of the story the way I read or reread Egghead and future arcs or whatever. There's no scene that's like some sort of masterfully crafted scene that now just becomes a Pell scene that doesn't exist, so I have nothing to say here. Now on the flip side, Kuma, I've gotten no critiques at the moment because we have yet to see how this whole Kuma situation is going to play out. But the very, very short version of thoughts I'll give here is that definitely, if you go back and reread Kuma's scene, the idea that was being communicated to the reader, that was being drawn out and milked to maximum degree, was that this was the death of Kuma's consciousness, right? That whole segment of literally running through all the phases of Kuma's life, like his life flashing through our eyes, right? Light streaming down from the heavens, characters praying to God, Vegapunk in tears, crying, the dramatic pulling of the lever, etc. That feels very, very powerful when I'm reading this as, oh my god, Kuma's mind is gone forever. That whole scene is kind of a joke if what's actually happening is that Kuma is going to sleep for 2 years, because I think most would agree that going to sleep for 2 years is nowhere near as bad or as powerful as the idea of the death of your consciousness permanently, which is what a lot of the sadness of that entire segment was predicated on. I think it becomes even more ridiculous when you consider that for the majority of those 2 years, Kuma was actually getting to do exactly what he wanted to do anyway, which was protect the Straw Hat ship. So really, that whole scene was just setting up about a month where Kuma does not have autonomy, right? I just think that scene's kind of ridiculous if I'm reading it as, oh no, Kuma's not going to have control over his body and mind for a month. It's obviously bad, right? Obviously bad, but a million worse things happen in One Piece, including to Kuma himself over the course of his flashback. So all the drama, it would now basically be kind of a joke. I think the scene's just kind of ridiculous to me if it's just like, oh my god, we're going to flash through all of Kuma's life and Vegapunk's going to have tears pouring down as he pulls this lever, and the light from God and heaven is going to be streaming down with Sentomaru and all of them praying to the heavens. If Kuma's not going to have control over his body for a month, not a month, that's the worst thing possible. The scene's a joke at that point to me, right? To me, it's a joke. So, and maybe I'll maybe a video will have to be done about that at some point down the line, but for the moment, we're just gonna chill, we're just gonna wait. No thoughts on that. So finally, we've got the God's Knights arriving. We've got Evil Shanks, Shanks' brother, and it's exciting, obviously, because we finally got our villains for the arc, right? Maybe these are the final villains, maybe not, because my thought right off the bat is that I personally feel it's more likely that Shanks' brother, his primary conflict would go against Shanks himself rather than with Luffy. So that still leaves the question mark as to, okay, well, what would Luffy's primary conflict be in this whole storyline? So I don't know if the God's Knights even are the absolute end-all, be-all villains of One Piece, or if there's something still waiting. We've still got Heaven's Realm up above, so there's still potential there. But we've, at the very least, got something to shake up, the really kumbaya, happy, like very idyllic situation that we've got going at right now with all the protagonists. Because while I very much enjoyed these opening, sections of Elbaf, where everything was, smooth sailing and wondrous magical adventureland, etc., now was about the time that, we needed something to actually shake it up. We needed to feel some sort of tension and stakes to this, island adventure. So this was the perfect time. I think, everything leading up to this moment, I'm going to enjoy this section of the story. I'm probably going to, in a few years' time, I'll be reading back this section of the story is like one of the more fun, just happy-go-lucky sections of One Piece, and then this is the perfect switch-up point, and it's coming at a nice moment, which is the end of the year. So heading into 2025, we've got a lot of One Piece hype going. We might have one more chapter, but I'm not sure. And finally, we've got a voice of the people, my top tier of patrons. Lane Iwakura says, this is just general food for thought that I would like for you to discuss. This new teleportation technique is a terrible idea because it breaks established rules of the world and makes sea travel trivial. Key part of the manga is getting from point A to point B is difficult, hence usage of log poses. Now it's just Game of Thrones Season 8 style teleportation for the sake of moving the plot. So while I would definitely agree if this was something that applied to the Straw Hats or the protagonists in general, I think this applying to the villains, especially at this stage of the story, is fine and almost necessary. Because so far, One Piece's conflict has been able to put such a hold on travel and fast travel precisely because every arc is island-based, right? So the protagonists are arriving at a given island and they're having to deal with the conflict and the villains there. So there's never really been any need for fast travel moving around because we're gonna tell the story at this island before then moving on. In fact, the distance and difficulty of travel kind of help justify why so many of the plots of these storylines could happen in like this sort of isolated bubble where it's like Alabasta's conflict is just gonna be Alabasta's conflict, like Wano's conflict is just gonna be Wano's conflict. It's difficult for a lot of forces to just show up at Wano even though important stuff is happening there because travel is a barrier. However, the final saga is fundamentally different where now we are opening up the world of One Piece and it's supposed to turn into a bit of a world war. So with that in mind, we do actually need to, at this point in time, move around a little bit faster or be able to move pieces faster because otherwise the story just kind of grinds to a halt. If villains cannot get from point A to point B expeditiously. It would require, what, weeks of travel for like a threat to show up, and then it's like, well, now they need reinforcements or something. Well, then more days of travel or something like that. Or like the Strahds are already at this next island, or like maybe the Strahds are at this island, but like the red-haired pirates need to be dealt with on this island or something, and you know, you can't move things around efficiently. So I think for the village, I think as long as the Straw Hats don't just unlock fast travel, and they kind of already do with Coup de Burst, but in general they still have to, you know, they still have to go somewhat slow for the most part. But as long as the Straw Hats aren't unlocking fast travel, I think moving around the villain pieces faster is okay in my opinion. I also think that with the Gods Knights, if you go back to the Saturn situation, it seemed as though Saturn needed to get physically close to the island before he could teleport there. That's why the other Gorosei couldn't just teleport from Marijua all the way to Egghead. Saturn said that he needed to summon them. So I think the way that it works is that Imu or the characters themselves can teleport themselves from point A to point B if it's in close enough proximity, and then once they're there, they can call in other people from longer distances. So I feel like we might see a similar situation with the Gods Knights, but I think it still requires some degree of travel. So hopefully that answers your question. And with that, I will talk to you all next week.